Hello everybody. This should be a really interesting video. So, I want to talk about atheism and how it's changed over the years and how everybody's like kind of virtue signaling transgender stuff. But first I want to talk about an idea I had because it kind of leads into this. I was talking to my friend at work yesterday and we've had some drama at work going on. They've hired like 6 or 7 new people. A couple of them seem to be like really Christian, and some people have said like the F word or goddamn or something at work, and there have been people almost get into fights about it because they think they hate people cursing in public or something that's against their religion, and it's getting into this whole weird thing, especially because my old boss that is now like the regional manager is a Wiccan, and my current boss says that he worships the Norse gods. I think he just says that because he has a big beard and he doesn't want to shave it for religious reasons. He tells them, and I'm not second in command under him, but it was offered to me and I turned it down. And I'm an atheist, so like the top 3 or so people in the company, none of us are Christians, and now all these new people are coming in and are getting mad about trying to like not separation of church and state, but trying to like make the job place like a Christian place. It's weird. So then I was talking to my friend. I don't think he's a former Muslim. His dad was a Muslim, but he says he's a Christian now. So I don't know if he used to be a Muslim or what, but he knows about it. We talk about it all the time, about Islam. I said, what if we started our own church? Like, how could we get like a government grant for that? And like, I could make it. They have like the Universal Unitarian churches. I don't know if they have like a humanist church, or if you could do that. But it would be like less focused on worshiping and more about like giving people doing marriages for people, helping homeless people, and like food drives. Maybe have like a Boy Scout thing there. It's always cool, or like some kind of scouting organization. Secular Scouts, they have that thing. Just programs like helping people like get GEDs. And maybe like once a week you would have different religions come in and like kind of explain their religion to people that don't know anything about it. Maybe you could have services for different ones at different times. Like, I don't know. So we're talking about this idea, and so then there's also been like in the atheist community, a lot of stuff is going on. Like I started watching the Atheist Experience in 2006, I believe, because I went back. They started televising the show on YouTube in like 2004. So I went back and watched the old episodes from the previous 2 years, and I'd been watching it pretty religiously up until a few years ago when I kind of got bored with it because everybody keeps making the same arguments. Christians have had 2,000 years to like have proof of God, and they never have anything. All the apologists use the same arguments over and over again, and they disprove it time and time again. Now, Matt Dillahunty is one of the main ones on the show that he has like the best arguments. But let me show you a screenshot of what the old show used to look like. Why is it not on the screen? Yeah. So they used to have like a chyron on the bottom that says caller, their name, where they're from. And then, once the transgender stuff started taking off, they started adding the pronouns and virtue signaling that they're pro-transgender. So, the woman on the left is named Jen Peoples, and she was a lesbian. And the new show, they have several people that are transgender, or LGBTQ+, or whatever. And I feel like they have to kind of cater to these people, because if you're LGBTQ+, whatever, you're more likely to be an atheist. Why? Because society, or like churches, obviously, a lot of them don't accept gay because the Bible says it's wrong or whatever. So you're more likely to be an atheist if you're LGBTQ. But that doesn't mean like all atheists support LGBTQ stuff. So, let me see, what does this say? This is the Wikipedia for Atheism Plus. Was a movement proposed in 2012 by blogger Jen McCrate. I remember this thing happened. I don't know if that one guy was involved with it that much, but this guy, PZ Myers, he was one of the main proponents of this. He was like kind of known for being a white knight. You know, like it seemed kind of creepy, like he was. Oh, what if I got a black screen? Like he was trying to be pro LGBTQ because he was virtue signaling to get women somehow. Like he had all these fans that would come and meet him, and you could hear stories. Maybe he had like this blog called the Pharyngula blog, right? So anyway, Atheism Plus kind of caused a schism within the atheist community. It's not even a religion, but it caused a schism. And then I thought Matt Dillahunty left the ACA. If you see this, no, that's not it. He left the ACA in like 2022, and he had this like video explaining why he left, and he said something about like he had this meeting with the board about how it would look bad for the LGBT community, or something about some kind of apology, or something happened on these forums or something like that. I didn't really understand what it was about, so I assumed he was kind of against all the pronoun stuff they were doing. Like I don't have an example of like a current one doing. Look up Atheist Experience now. The new videos. Here's the most recent one. Forrest Valkai is on this show. He's on another show though, and they use the same graphics. Like whenever they get a caller, say they put he, him, and the other show this other guy runs, he seems like a huge asshole. It's called The Line. Jimmy Snow. I can't stand that guy now. He just seems like such a dick when he like comes in and interrupts. Some people will troll him and tell him like a weird thing. Like if I called in the show, I'd tell him my pronouns are like Your Majesty and Your Highness or something like that, and see if they would go with it. But this virtue signaling thing, like you can tell they didn't used to do it. Now they did it. What's changed? If it was true the whole time, why once people start talking about transgenderism, you have like Jordan Peterson, all these people like talking about it. Now all of a sudden they want to start putting it on their Chiron and virtue signaling that they're with it, so that these people that are like in their ACA atheist community of Austin don't get mad and like cause all this controversy. It's kind of weird. It has nothing to do with atheism, other than like if you don't have any God beliefs, then you should accept everybody. It just doesn't make any sense. So then lately this guy, you probably seen, what the heck is his name? Andrew Wilson. You've probably seen him on like the Whatever podcast, talking about feminism, and he also does the thing where he asks people like, what is a woman? What is the definition of woman? And he's against transgender stuff. He always made a lot of good points to me, and I didn't realize he's like a super Christian, so he has like a bad reason for his argument, even though I agree with the arguments he makes most of the time about transgenders, but not for Christian reasons. It's because it's the same problem when Christians would call in and they would say they believe in God, and you would say, if Jesus says that he's God, there's this thing called the Lord, liar, lunatic thing people would always say. Like, he's either lying, he's actually Jesus and he's the Lord, or he's a crazy person, he's a lunatic. And there was one episode of AC Experience where Matt Dillahunty said, yeah, and there's also a fourth category, legend. Like, maybe people were mistaken and they thought he was the Lord, but the legend grew. It's not like anybody was lying intentionally, but like over time things got confused and changed and interpreted wrong. So, Lord, liar, lunatic, and legend. So then, yesterday, on the other show, this guy calls in. This guy's a Christian, but he has like the same question I've been thinking about this whole time, and I'm an atheist. So we both agree, why aren't religious people and transgenders treated the same with respect to skepticism? If somebody says God exists, you should be skeptical of that. Ask them, like, how can you tell the difference between God not existing or God being invisible and you just can't interact with him? Like, there's no difference between non-existence and hiddenness, divine hiddenness. So the same thing, if somebody says they're a woman but they have a penis, and you know that they've been born a man, how can you tell the difference between an actual transgender person and a liar? Because, stay with me, let's go back here and let's go here. Here is a chart of LGBTQ population growth as Generation Z comes of age. So this hasn't been updated for Gen Alpha, but notice how much higher Gen Z is saying 16 to 20% from 2020 to 2022 identify as some sort of LGBTQ+. Now they say like the whole population is 1% transgender now. But if the just generation Gen Z is 20% and Gen Alpha is probably going to continue the trend and be like 25-30%, then as these older generations like the baby boomers and the silent generation start dying off, we're going to get to the point where 1 in 4 or something people are LGBTQ. And out of that 25%, maybe 10-15% might be non-binary or LGBT or trans. So, what does that tell you? 2020 is when the increase started happening. Also, when people started talking about these pronouns, and all these people like teachers in colleges started like indoctrinating people and started making everybody think that they're trans, and it became trendy to be trans. Therefore, there's a benefit to saying you're trans. Like Dylan Mulvaney. Does anybody think Dylan Mulvaney is actually trans? Or if you go through his history, just do that real quick. I didn't have this one ready. Go to his channel. Go to his videos. He's taken all of his videos down. Well, that's interesting. Because somebody the other day pointed out, if you go back to his earlier videos, you can see where he used to be in the Book of Mormon cast for Broadway. And then he started making videos where I'm thinking about being gay. Now he's gay. He gets more views. So like, now I think I might be like non-binary. So he becomes non-binary and he gets more views. And he's like, well, let's keep pushing it even further. Now I'm going to start day one as a woman. And he gets even more views. And now he's skyrocketed to popularity. Made all this money. It's ridiculous. So there's absolutely a benefit to saying you're trans. Oh, I didn't even have the browser on for Dylan Mulvaney's. His videos are all gone. There's proof of that. There you go. So the point is, if you want to know like if people are actually trans or not, or if they're just doing it for clout or to become popular, how can you tell? You should be able to evaluate them skeptically somehow. I know there's no way to prove if they are or not because it's a subjective experience. Now, this guy calls into the show yesterday. He says this.
Andrew, pronouns he, him, from Florida, who is a theist, who has a position that it sounds like to me he has not thought about. Because this sounds like something that just popped into somebody's head. He says, why do theists need evidence for their subjective experience, while the transgender community does not need evidence for their subjective experience? That's a double standard. Andrew, you're on the line. How are you doing today?
So that's exactly the point I was just making. How can you prove somebody says they're trans if they're telling the truth, or maybe they got kind of indoctrinated into thinking they're trans, they're not really trans? Like, people would say, like, if I have these questions, just questioning it, I'm transphobic. Number one, phobic means you're afraid of something. I'm not afraid of trans people, first of all. I'm not afraid some trans person is going to trick me and try to have sex with me. I don't care. If you're a woman in locker rooms and like a man comes in with a big dick, or like a trans woman comes in with a big dick and balls hanging around, that's probably going to make you pretty uncomfortable. You might worry about getting raped. So some people might be transphobic and they probably have good reason for it. I can't knock them for that. And it's also not a hate thing. It's not like a trans hate thing, because I have no reason to hate trans people. I just don't believe when they say there's like 20% of these Gen Z guys are trans. Like, I don't believe those are real trans people. I think the actual numbers are around less than 1%, like it's been since the 70s and the 80s. There might be more people that are like, they just decide they want to be trans because it's maybe the people didn't come out back and then in like the 70s, so they didn't come out as much, and now they're coming out more because they feel more comfortable. So maybe it's a little bit higher, but 20%? That's like ridiculous numbers. So then the next thing that I thought was interesting was this part.
You understand that being trans is an actual real thing that's recognized by every major medical association, right? Mm-hmm. Every major medical association, the American Medical Association.
I agree with him so far. I agree it's a real thing. I just don't think the numbers are as high as everybody says they are.
The American Psychiatric Association, they understand what it is to be trans. That is an actual thing that happens in someone's brain, and that's a thing that we can actually study and diagnose. And like, there's actually a way that we make sure those people are taken care of. We can improve their mental and physical health outcomes just by taking care of them, right?
So, how many people do you think that are trans actually go to the doctor and get diagnosed as being trans and get their brain scanned? I think less than 0.00001% of the 1% that claim that they're trans, or 20% of Gen Zers that claim they're trans. I don't think anybody's getting their brain scanned to see, am I really trans or not? Nobody's doing that. And I just realized I forgot to mention the reason that Matt Dillahunty rage quit this debate he was at with Andrew Wilson was because he's now dating Arden Hart, which is a trans woman on the show. And another thing that I kind of personally, on a personal level, I don't believe trans women are women, because it seems like they spend a lot of time learning how to do feminine voices and facial expressions. Like they kind of watch the camera to see how they look a lot. Like they're trying to look as feminine as they can. And I see a lot of trans women doing this. Oh, on the transphobia thing too, I didn't mention drag queens. I may have a phobia against drag queens, because that's kind of a whole different animal, because not all drag queens are trans. There could just be straight men that like dressing as women for fun. And the whole thing with the drag queen story time, I talked about it before, like there's a thing about children and they're in their developing years when they see clowns. They get like 1 in 10 people get a fear of clowns because it's like an exaggeration of human features and it doesn't look right. It's like that uncanny valley with AI and stuff and graphics. So when you see drag queens with their crazy makeup and weird colored hair, everything just looks wild. That's probably fucking kids up a lot. Just to call it. It's not really that I hate that, but I'm afraid of it. I guess I'm afraid it's going to cause problems with the world and society. Is that transphobia or drag phobia? I don't even know. Next point. Here.
So comparing the two and saying, you should believe me when I say I believe in God because I had this experience, and is the same thing as saying you should believe me that I'm trans because I have this gender dysphoria or whatever it may be, those are completely non-comparable things.
Why are they non-comparable things? You're making a claim that you have this subjective experience about God. You're making this claim, this subjective experience that you are a woman, but even though we see you're not. Both of them don't have any evidence backing them up that we can see. So you need to prove those statements, right? I don't understand where he's going.
Do you get how those are completely different? How one is rooted in someone's subjective experience, yes, but it actually has facts to back up the phenomenon that's happening.
The facts he's talking about the brain scans and the fact that some people are trans in the world that has been verified by science. I agree with that some people. I just don't agree that everyone is trans. The facts are backing up the 1%. The facts are not backing up the other 19, 20% that are saying that they're trans because they have a huge following on TikTok. That's what I'm having a problem with.
That's very different than what you're talking about. And I think the biggest disconnect that you have here when you talk about subjective experience and believing people's experience, as Paul said, if somebody calls in and says I had a religious experience, we're going to take them at face value for it in terms that they experienced it. We just don't believe that their understanding of that experience was valid. You know, it's like if I walk down my hallway, this is true. I have a hallway right behind this wall with my bedroom on the side. It's a narrow hallway. Every single day when I walk down that hallway, the bedroom door slams behind me because of the air pressure shift from me walking down the hall. Now I can believe that's a ghost. That's the true experience. Is I heard the door slam. I can come and tell you that's a ghost slamming the door, and you can say it's probably not.
I don't understand his comparison here because, like, we used to have tomboys and tomgirls. Girls that would do masculine things and boys that would do feminine things. Like, there's different, like, it's like a gradient or whatever. Like with the homosexuality is like on a scale. So I don't understand how he can say like one's a subjective experience and one is not. They're both subjective. And then he says,
and the difference here is that the experience of a trans person tells us about trans people.
We don't know what their experience is.
The experience of a trans person is explaining to us what it means to be trans.
Or they could be lying. How can you tell the difference between a trans person that's really experiencing being the opposite gender from their assigned sex at birth, or a liar? Or maybe somebody that's been indoctrinated and confused. Maybe it's not even gender dysphoria. Maybe it's like confusion because that's all they hear about on the videos they watch. And then people in their friend group, everybody's saying they're trans. Like, maybe I should be trans too just to fit in because it seems like everybody around me is becoming trans, so maybe I should do it.
But like, that's the thing, dude. Like, being trans, like I said, it only talks to you. It only speaks to your experience, and it's backed by evidence. And more importantly, it isn't hurting anybody.
It's not hurting anybody? Has he never heard of trans women in sports? Does he not know about wrestlers and fighters that are like beating the shit out of women? Does he not know about Leah Thomas just dominating everybody in swimming and like going into their locker rooms with their dicks hanging out? And like, isn't that a little suspect that you're going into a women's bathroom or a locker room and you got a penis? And that made me think like maybe I do have a little bit of homophobia or transphobia, because like now I'm starting to think like, should we let lesbians into women's bathrooms and gay men into men's bathrooms? Because if you're going into a place where you might see somebody naked that you're attracted to, like, I know people are just using I don't want to be around somebody that could be attracted to me while I'm naked. It's just weird. We shouldn't even have bathrooms with multiple people in them in the first place. That in itself is weird. Everybody should just have their own singular bathroom that you take turns. Like, just wait your turn. But locker rooms is kind of, I don't know. It's just a weird situation. If that's transphobic, I guess I'm transphobic. But I don't see what that has to do with atheism. You can be an atheist and not agree with all this extra baggage, like the LGBTQ stuff. And I consider myself pretty liberal. I just have no reason to virtue signal and like push these pronouns on people, and like it's getting real cringy right now. Not everybody's buying into this crap, but it's like they feel like if they don't say they're for it, then it looks bad against it, and like you could get canceled, or there's all these implications and circumstances that can happen. I don't know. What do you guys think about this? Am I crazy?